So hello everyone, welcome to this interview with Christophe Semke, who is the communications manager of Materialise. And Materialise is a company, and I'm sure that Christophe will explain us a little bit more about it. It's a company that is all about 3D printing and making the world a healthier and better place through innovation, which is a wonderful mission statement, I believe, already dating back from when the founder, Fried van Kraan, and still CEO of the company, that he came up with 30 years ago already. And personally, I didn't know that 3D printing was already out there in 1990, but it was. So we're super happy that you're here.
Glad to be here.
With Enactus Belgium, where we're doing a series of interviews with inspiring organizations and people like yourselves to see how people in difficult, challenging times are coping, first of all, and then also are using it almost as an opportunity and being creative and bringing things from the market that can help people in these specific, confined, difficult times. So that's a short introduction. We're very happy you're here.
Virtually.
So I just wanted to ask you, maybe you can introduce yourself briefly, who you are, and also what is Materialise? What is it all about?
Sure. So my name is Christophe Semke, and I am the communication manager and spokesperson for Materialise. Materialise is a true 3D printing pioneer. As you mentioned, we've been here for about, we've been here 30 years. We have our 30th anniversary this year in June. So we were not the first, but one of the very first 3D printing companies in the world, founded in 1990. And what we do is basically on two levels. On the one hand, we develop software for the industrial 3D printers. So not your home 3D printers, which you may or may not have at home, but for the industrial size 3D printers, we are the leading software developer. And on the other hand, we also 3D print ourselves. We manage and run the largest 3D printing factory in Europe and one of the largest in the world. And so we 3D print for companies in a variety of sectors, from automotive industry to the aeronautics industry, and also to a very large extent for the medical industry, because in the medical industry, there's the personalization benefit of 3D printing is very relevant. And so that's one of the industries where we are very active.
Okay, thank you. So, so basically you 3D print yourself, and sometimes it's your customer who
correct
does that.
Yeah.
And
that's
you
correct.
help them to get to a design which they can then print.
Correct. And that's a pretty unique situation whereby we develop the software and we are also one of the biggest users of our own software. And so that sort of collaboration between the development of the software and the actual using of the software is pretty unique in our industry. We are, in our 3D printing factories, one of the most demanding customers towards software developers. When we say, hey guys, we're running into these problems, we need that to be addressed through software. So we call it the kitchen and the restaurant, you know, where we cook the food, but we also eat the food. And so that's a pretty unique situation in our industry, and it makes us better on all fronts. It makes us a better manufacturer, and it makes us a better software developer.
Because you have this cross-fertilization.
Correct.
Yeah, great. And I was wondering, maybe for people who don't know Materialise all that well, you're a Belgian company, right?
Yes.
And where are you based, and how many people work for Materialise?
Yeah, well, we're a publicly traded company, so we trade on the Nasdaq. We have about 2,200 employees globally. The majority of that sits in our headquarters in Leuven, but we are active in 27 countries. So we are through multinational.
Yeah, thank you. Now, as you know, I don't have to introduce this. We're going through particularly challenging times with COVID-19, Corona, confinement. We're each trying to find our ways across the globe, in fact. Maybe if you can share us a little bit about how you, I mean, we're all coping with it as individuals and as organizations, as communities. How are you as a business dealing with the direct impact of Corona?
Yeah, I think it's impacting us in the same way that it's impacting pretty much all companies around the world. We have a large part of our workforce working from home, such as myself. We still have people working in the factory, 3D print factory as well, of course. And you know, what we see is it remains to be seen what the impact will be longer term. This is an external cause. This is not a problem that's innate to an economic readjustment, for example, like a bubble in the economy. This is an external factor, and so we'll see. I think it depends on the timing in terms of, you know, can we recover quickly enough and then we can, you know, revert back to normal, or do we spiral down? You know, that's obviously, you know, too early to tell. But that's you know, that's what we're facing now. I think in general, you see those companies that have started to adopt digital technologies earlier on. We find that these are now the companies that are performing well. And those companies that are taking a more gradual approach to the adoption of these digital technologies, you know, or digital transformations as they are being called, if you're slower to adopt them, you're now struggling more. And we see that very practically with things like video conferencing, for example. That's a very concrete example, but you haven't invested even in those basic capabilities. That puts you in a weaker situation. And we see those companies who have made that transition, who have started to adopt those digital technologies, they're now performing much better. AM, additive manufacturing, another word for 3D printing, is one of those digital technologies. And I think, we always call 3D printing a slow revolution, as in it is revolutionary because it changes people's lives, it can save lives, it's changing the way we manufacture and distribute goods, but it's a slow revolution. It happens slowly and gradually. We'll see if this pace of this slow revolution will be now accelerated through this crisis, as we see globally in adoption of these kinds of technologies. And certainly 3D printing, if you've been watching the side news a bit, 3D printing is getting a lot of attention in this current situation, as it offers specific benefits that have always been present, but that are more clearly shown or more visible now, and lending a hand in this specific situation.
Well, maybe building on that, you're a company that is very much focused on innovation, right? And you're talking about a revolution or an evolution and revolution. Einstein said at his time, you know, in every crisis there is an opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
I've been reading and I was really, intrigued by it. By your title on websites and social media, you know, do less harm, use your arm, and I quote. And this is about the hands-free 3D shopping cart handles. And you have also been designing a hands-free door opener. And these are obviously specifically, I guess, can always be used, but can also specifically be used in these times. And it's a very nice example, if you ask me, of an innovation that is born or could be presented in a challenging time. Can you tell us a little bit more about how these opportunities or how these ideas came about?
Sure. Before I do so, I think, and I will explain a bit more about them, these two are examples of what we call meaningful applications. And that's what 3D printing is all about. So if you consider 3D printing, it is a manufacturing technology, right? But don't view 3D printing as just another way, a different way to manufacture the same product. 3D printing is about making a difference. It's about specific benefits that the technology brings. It allows you to create products faster, to bring them to market faster, to create design optimizations. For example, we make parts for airplanes that are lighter or stronger. And so it's those unique benefits that this manufacturing technology offers. And so what you need to do is look for those applications out there that are meaningful and that can truly benefit from the advantages that 3D printing brings. And so examples of that before the corona crisis are things like hearing aids, for example, right? Not many people know this, but I think 99% of all hearing aids in the world nowadays are 3D printed. Before 3D printing came along, they were all handcrafted. But it made a lot of sense because you can personalize the inner ear of the hearing aid. And so that's an example of a meaningful application where it just makes good sense to use the technology of 3D printing to manufacture those hearing aids. So that's an example, a classic example of a meaningful application. So when this crisis arose 2 or 3 weeks ago, and we were faced with challenges as well internally, we were in an internal meeting where we were discussing how are we going to address some of these challenges internally for our own production and our own employees and visitors. And so one of the things we decided was to split the employee base in team A and team B, mostly on a manufacturing level, so they wouldn't interact with each other. But we were faced with a challenge. Well, what happens with those instances where they can still contaminate each other? For example, using the handles in the staircases or the door handles on the doors, that would still be a risk even if those two teams don't meet up. So long story short, our own CEO actually came up with the idea of, well, why don't we harness what we do best, which is design engineering and 3D printing. And he came up with the idea of developing a sort of extension piece. It's a paddle-shaped plastic extension piece that you can mount on an existing door handle, which would allow you then to open the door with your arm, your underarm, which would reduce the need to touch the handle with your hand, reducing the risk of contamination. It's a small, simple device, but it really demonstrates the power of 3D printing, whereby we went literally from an idea that was mentioned in a meeting to a first physical product coming out of the 3D printer within 24 hours. So, and in between that, there was also still the design phase, of course, because you have to turn your idea, your concept into a design, a 3D design on the computer. And then a few hours later, we had already the first physical prototype. We did one revision, and then we had a product. And so we then decided, obviously, to use that product internally in our own office. But we realized this is something that that can benefit more people. And so one of the powers, as I just explained, you can make it, you can produce it very quickly. Within a matter of hours, we had a first physical product. Another benefit of 3D printing, one of these drivers that I mentioned before that make a difference in the technology, is that you can make it available globally in a matter of hours. We put the design online available for free, and people in China, in America, all over Europe, they could download that file, manufacture it locally, and have it available in a matter of hours, completely disrupting, if you will, the traditional supply chain and distribution model of goods, which are now being jeopardized as travel and transport becomes more difficult. So as travel and transport becomes more difficult, the ability to manufacture locally becomes crucial.
Yeah, this is brilliant. There's a couple of things that strike me. It's the speed with which you came up with this idea and then started to develop, design, develop, and execute, and then even share so that others could use it. So
so if you translate to a traditional manufacturing technology, that cycle would be so much longer. You can make the same or similar products. You can probably make them cheaper. You can make them, you can mass manufacture them in a factory in China. But just imagine how long it would take to go through that entire process and have it available globally in different countries. That would take so much longer.
And in this particular case, was there anything, because I guess speed is always a motivation in your innovation process. But I guess in this case, it went so fast. Was there anything that you did in particular, considering that you wanted to have it done fast, to meet the needs fast?
So 3D printing is also called rapid prototyping sometimes, because initially the technology was used for prototyping, right? Now that's changing, not just changing, because it's also still used for prototyping. You can develop prototypes very quickly through 3D printing, but the technology is also now used to manufacture final products, really end-use products, right? But that notion of speed is still present, of course. inherently in the technology as such. So yeah, it was impressive. Just to give you an example, you mentioned already the other application, which is the shopping cart handle, which is another application, very simple device. You know, we all know that going to the supermarket now, we're sort of, you know, what do we do with the handle of the shopping cart? Because, you know, a lot of people touch it. And so we created a handle, two handles that you could mount easily on the shopping cart that would allow you to maneuver and steer the shopping cart with your arms and not with your hands. We called the owner of a supermarket in Belgium on a Wednesday, and we said, hey, would you be interested in such a solution? And he was like, yeah, I need this because my customers are concerned about the safety. And literally the next day, we already delivered him a first set of these handles, and he was obviously, you know, he couldn't understand how we were able to manufacture that so quickly. So that's an inherent benefit of the technology. What's interesting to see now is that you may have seen some of these examples where 3D printing is now used as part of the Corona crisis to manufacture products, mostly medical products that really make a difference. I mean, there's an example of a hospital in Italy. They were short of valves or connection pieces for a breathing apparatus, a ventilator. And they literally went to their local 3D printing store and said, can you guys please manufacture these for us? And they had them in a matter of hours, and it literally saved lives. So stories like that are now, they're in the media now all over the place. We already had that capability before, but just the need now for speed and early delivery and local manufacturing is even more imminent as a result of this crisis. And so people are now awakening to this. People who weren't aware of these capabilities before are now, waking up to these advanced capabilities that 3D printing as a digital manufacturing technology brings to the world.
So it may even be, building on that, it may even be that this is a time that there will be an acceleration in these types of applications, because they become more visible, where they were perhaps not to the people involved like yourselves, but to larger number of people. They become visible, and as people start to think about the possibilities, perhaps there will be more of a revolution.
Now, in the medical industry, that was already understood, of course. We are very active in the medical industry, and just to be very clear, you need to have certified manufacturing. You cannot just manufacture implants or parts for medical usage on a home printer. A lot of these things are certified. We go through very strict processes to obtain those certifications. So the example I gave was sort of a grassroots initiative, but combine those capabilities that are inherently there with the fact that this is already happening for many, many years on a certified basis, qualified, certified, FDA approved basis. That makes a strong case, of course. But to your point, I think that outside of those industries that are traditionally already familiar with 3D printing, there is an increased awareness. And so, it may be that that there's an acceleration now of that's what we call the slow revolution. Maybe that's the pace of that revolution will increase a little bit. We'll see.
Yeah, and another thing that struck me is this hands-on and quick responding and quick taking action, and I believe it looks like that's also an important part. Some would call it opportunistic, but you can also say, you thought about an idea. Well, let's call an owner of a supermarket and let's try it out. And that's very much also part of a design thinking process. And the students within Enactus are constantly, they're basically driven by addressing societal problems, societal challenges, and they want to tackle those in an entrepreneurial way. So they are constantly thinking about turning ideas into solutions, into implementation, into social enterprise in the end. And I was wondering, could you share some insights for them about this process and some of the things that are very important in that process of bringing things from ideas to solutions?
Yeah. A few notions here. I think one, from a distance, it's and we talked about this earlier, is how do you identify, you know, those causes that are worth, you know, fighting for? And in this case, obviously, it's clear it's the Corona situation, but also in day-to-day situations, there are always these opportunities. And so, as you mentioned, we have a mission to make the world a better and healthier place, which sounds very soft, but it's something that's really ingrained in our DNA and everything that we do. In terms of how you can make a difference then within that, you know, as part of creating a more sustainable world, it's, I mean, there's no golden rule, of course, but and I think I gave it away already by talking about the meaningful applications, right? When you consider the current crisis that we have, what are the meaningful applications at this moment?
Mm-hmm.
We started out working on these very simple devices to open doors, which are, you know, simple but very effective. They're being used in hospitals around the world. We're also looking into more medical applications to help, you know, develop breathing apparatus, for example, to you know, to help in that aspect. But even if there's no crisis, you know, it's I come back to this notion of the meaningful application. You know, it's identifying those applications that make most sense. And for that, you know, look at what you're capable of doing. For 3D printing, it is not yet at a level where we can, and we never will compete with traditional existing mass manufacturing technologies in big factories in China. That's not where 3D printing can make a difference. So look for those meaningful applications where the technologies, or on a personal level, your personal capabilities, can be most valuable. And when you strike that, it's you can make a real, you can make a big difference. And really important in that whole process, as you go about that, is collaboration. I mean, again, that's a buzzword, but we use the concept of co-creation. It's either companies that know what to do through 3D printing. For example, they want to 3D print spare parts to reduce the you know, the stress on their stock, but they don't really know how to do it. And then they work with us. They know their business really well. We know 3D printing really well, and together we can come up with solutions that, you know, that fit within their business paradigm, and that maximizes the capabilities of 3D printing through our expertise. Or it could be people that have heard about 3D printing, as they do now, through, you know, what's happening with the crisis, and they're interested in saying, how can is there a way for me to use this technology? Is there a place in my manufacturing process or my business process where I can incorporate that specific digital manufacturing technology? And we'll collaborate with those people as well from a more fundamental level, and go through their process and go, well, you're making that part there in that way. There's a better way to do that, or you can make that stronger or lighter or faster through this technology. So it's meaningful applications, enabled through a process of co-creation, not going on your own, because nobody can make it on, you know, can make that big of a difference on their own, but through co-creation process, creating those meaningful applications and making a true difference.
Very interesting. Thank you. I think that's a very nice lesson for Enactus students as well, who are very collaborative, but also learning about and finding out about the partnerships that they could be starting with organizations and businesses out there that are working in the same field, but in complementary arenas. Enactus students are collaborative, they're entrepreneurial, and they're focused on making an impact. Is there any, and this is the final question, are there any tips, insights, advice that you would have for Enactus students in particular?
Before I worked here, I worked at another big tech company, a chip manufacturer in Silicon Valley, and they had, you know, there was this one notion that we always used to say, and that was, don't be encumbered by history, but go off and do something wonderful. And that really means, you know, as you're a young student and you want to be an entrepreneur, it's easy now to be impressed by what's available, and especially now in these times of digital transformation, it seems like, you know, everything is out there. How can I still make a difference? And so this notion of don't be encumbered, don't be, you know, pushed down by history, great history, you can still go off and do something that's amazing and that can make a difference. And there's plenty of examples out there. So that's what I would, you know, encourage people to do, is to, you know, believe in themselves. And I think the young generation is one of those generations that is certainly able to do that. And as you go out there, you know, again, look for those meaningful applications and meaningful means that it can respond to a specific need, but also that there's a business opportunity behind it. And I think if you marry those two, those are the applications I think that will really resonate.
Super, thank you so much. I thought this was very inspirational.
Thank you.
You are definitely making the world a healthier and better place through innovation. So truly inspiring, especially also for Enactus, the Enactus community in Belgium and worldwide. So we wish you a lot of luck and continued success with that. And I wanted to thank you very much for your time and your energy and your inspiration.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much.